just
All
hit the
right.
go live. So we'll start
Awesome.
our chat in just a little bit.
Okay. All right. Nice. I'm excited. I hope we get a
Me
big,
too.
we get that big group that we,
I
yeah,
know.
some of our regulars that
I
come.
know. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
But yeah, did some decorating.
Nice. Nice. I see. Yeah, we still have to put up like everything. I got some, we got window boxes, so I can't wait. I've never had those before, so we'll get to
Oh,
do something different.
well, that'll be fun. Well, yes. Well, I'm so excited that you are here, Angela. Thank you so much for your time. And for those who are just tuning in, thank you so much for joining us. We were just talking about the holidays, and that's why you're here today. So, hi, everyone. Welcome to How to Support Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion during the holiday season with Dr. Angela Searcy. My name is Raven Griffin, Marketing Manager at Kaplan Early Learning Company. Thank you for joining us for this engaging and educational time with Dr. Angela Searcy as she addresses key issues related to race, equity, and social justice impacting young children. At Kaplan Early Learning Company, we stand united with Black educators, children, families, communities, and team members in advancing equity out of love and empathy. We are committed to supporting social justice, investing in diversity and inclusion efforts, and advocating and providing equitable learning opportunities for team members in early learning communities. This is one reason why discussions such as the one we are having today is not only important, it is necessary and will be ongoing. Before we get started, I would like to introduce our phenomenal presenter. Dr. Angela Searcy is an educational consultant and seminar leader at Erickson Institute and the owner and founder of Simple Solutions Educational Services, a professional development company. She holds a BA in English and Secondary Education, an MS in Early Childhood Development from Erickson Institute, and a doctorate in education. Her research revolves around brain-based learning as assessed by the Classroom Assessment Scoring System, or CLASS, and its correlation to aggressive behaviors in Head Start preschool classrooms. An educator since 1990, Dr. Searcy has experience as a teacher at all levels of education and as a development therapist through the Early Intervention System of Illinois. Dr. Searcy is also an adjunct instructor at Erickson Institute, a professional development provider for Teaching Strategies, LLC, and the Bureau of Education and Research, an affiliate trainer for Teachstone, and the author of Push Past It, a positive approach to challenging behaviors, available via Kaplan Early Learning Company. A former neurodevelopmental specialist, Dr. Searcy has specialized training in neuroscience and is a candidate in Erickson Institute's Infant Mental Health Certificate Program. Welcome, Dr. Angela Searcy.
Thank you so much, Raven. I am so excited to be here and be back with everyone to talk about this great topic. And I always begin discussions around diversity, equity, inclusion with thinking about our goals from the National Association for the Education of Young Children. And one of those goals is that each child will demonstrate self-knowledge and family pride and a positive social identity. And that's a great place to start as we talk about the holidays. In addition to that goal, we also have a second goal, which is expressing comfort and joy around human diversity. And the holidays are the perfect time to do this. So I suggest beginning with learning with children and families about the holidays instead of thinking about celebrating a single event. This is really a learning opportunity. So hopefully you are doing a survey with your families to find out what exactly are the holidays and traditions that they have. So that's the first part. If you haven't done that, then make sure you kind of send a survey out. It'll help you throughout the entire year. And then from that survey, you can do it multiple times as families come and go and in and out of a program. Then you start thinking about how you're going to, have families teach us more about those celebrations. So it's really not like a single event. It's really thinking about meaningful learning opportunities throughout the entire year. Now, there's not just one type of celebration. Even if everyone in your program has the same, celebration, they all do it so differently. So I think that one of the first things that I love, and I always love to share literature with you all. If you know me, you know that I always have a book list. And one of my first ways or favorite ways to begin talking about the holidays is with a book called The Day You Begin. And some of you are like, Angela, is that really a holiday? Is that a book about holidays? Absolutely. And let me tell you why. This book begins with just kind of understanding children and our uniqueness. So I'll just show a couple of pages to you, give you a sneak peek. It starts out with a child and a little girl. As you can see, here we go. There you go. You can see a picture of her. There will be times when you walk into a room and no one there is quite like you. Isn't that a great way to begin a story? And it really talks about that self identity first. And it talks about, maybe it's your skin, maybe it's your clothes, maybe the curl of your hair, right? That makes each of us unique. And the book is so rich because it goes into, maybe there'll be times when no one understands the way words curl from your mouth. Right? So it even delves into uniqueness in terms of how we look, but also in terms of our language. And then the book goes further into just celebration of all of our differences. And what I really love about this book, just kind of kick off talking about, our uniqueness. And it's one that you can just bring out anytime to begin talking about how we're all unique. Is that it even talks about how sometimes we might feel like an outsider because we're so different. So, there's this great picture here in this part of the story where it talks about, unfamiliar things that, maybe your mother packed a lunch that was unfamiliar to the other children and that are strange to them. And what a great jumping off point for talking about differences in terms of holidays. And so holidays are a time for learning about each other, which is such a great start. And the book is, it goes into such wonderful differences of even how we play differently, how we interact with one another differently. So I actually start our holidays with this book where it says, okay, has there been a holiday that you celebrate that no one else, right? You don't know anybody else that celebrates that holiday. So it gets children talking, especially this is a great book for children as young as 3 years old. The pictures for maybe like a picture walk for children who are 2 years old. But as children are 3 and 4 and they have that great language and up, they can talk about how maybe, well, I celebrate in a different way than you celebrate. Or I celebrate a holiday that you don't. And having that discussion is a great way to make everyone feel included. And then we want to go into, as we talk about finding out the uniqueness between, even if we celebrate the same holiday, how we're all different and unique, then go into how we give families and children the option to participate. So you invite them to participate in an activity surrounding a holiday or learn about an activity, right? Learn more about that holiday if you don't participate in it. So it gives an option of, okay, well, I don't celebrate that, but I would like to learn about that. So we talked before about how books and activities can be mirrors, which actually support children's self, right, development of identity and self, but also thinking about windows. And windows are just viewing into somebody else's experience to learn more about that. So keeping that in mind, that we want to have a balance of mirrors so children develop a great self-identity, that back to that NACE, right, anti-bias framework, and then also making that balance between windows. So children have a window into, another experience that someone else might be having. So I have some resources. And one of the resources that I wanted to share with you to help you to think about and reflect on, planning for holidays is a YouTube video. It's a TED Talk about the danger of a single story. And that's something really important to think about during the season, that there's no one single way to celebrate and to draw children's attention to the diversity that we have. And that goes into that second goal that I mentioned from an anti-bias curriculum from NACE, which stands for the National Association for the Education of Young Children. And that second goal is to express comfort and joy with human diversity. So thinking about, of course, holidays are wonderful and rituals, but when we're talking about educators, we want to give that joy to understanding others during this time and learning from them. So a couple of things about, well, how do I do this, Angela? What does this look like in a practical sense? Invite families to share with you. So instead of having a holiday party, have a sharing party. And that could be, oh yes, I know we have some restrictions in terms of the pandemic and things. So have that Zoom sharing party where everybody comes in and they share something that's special up to them about the holidays. Or have a learning party or both, where you say, okay, I'm going to be sharing at this party. And some people say, oh, I'm going to be learning at this party. So that opens the door for everyone to have a meaningful role, whether they, right, engage in that, right, and participating in that holiday, or they don't. We can always learn from each other. Okay. Another idea is to honor and celebrate families. And also, when you think of the holidays, really think about the meaning behind the holiday, not specifically only the day itself. So, for example, Thanksgiving is coming up, and many people celebrate Thanksgiving. So, what is the heart of Thanksgiving? Well, something that will be meaningful for all the children is one, if you participate in Thanksgiving, share out how you do that. If you don't, you'll be taking a learning stance at that moment. And then ending that, experience with everyone writing thank you notes to someone who's been helpful, to the staff, maybe at their program, to other families. And that's something that everyone can participate in. That being thankful and being grateful and giving thanks is something that we do regardless of a holiday. Even though that holiday may be something that some families will, right, have some traditions around. Another idea is to do, songs and music. And that's another way to, instead of having the traditional maybe pageant that we're used to, I remember those. I participated in those when I was a child. And sometimes that can feel some children feeling like an outsider. So maybe just having a song festival, right, instead of a holiday festival. And songs can definitely be centered around the holidays. And so therefore we have children, instead of singing, maybe a Christmas song, which a Christmas song could be great, they could also sing a song that makes them think about the weather at this time of year. So they have a choice. They can still sing a Christmas song, or they can sing a song that ties more to what they're celebrating or what they're thinking about during this time of year. Which again, right, brings in, come on everyone, those who are on that Facebook Live, go ahead and type in the chat box that we don't have to choose here, that we can be very inclusive and that no one feels left out. People who celebrate during that time can still celebrate. Those who don't can still feel included and feel as though they're learning something and we're learning from each other. Even someone who doesn't celebrate something, we can learn why they don't celebrate it. And that could be meaningful for children. We also want to talk about how we celebrate things differently and it looks differently. Some children may be fasting during the holidays, right? So if they're celebrating Ramadan, they could be fasting. So they could be celebrating by not eating something. Or some children may not be eating leavened bread during the holidays. So then that's how they're celebrating. And then other children could be, oh yes, I remember, was it last week? It was, oh my gosh, Dulave, that the Festival of Lights that maybe didn't, that it was last week, right? So yeah, come on, type in the chat box for those who celebrate that Festival of Lights that is celebrated by millions of people across the globe. And so that's another celebration that you could talk about that other children may not be aware of. So things to think about as well. Make sure that you're not only celebrating one type of holiday, that you are getting information from families, right? The community in which families live. So neighborhood celebrations is a great way to approach the holidays. and just have the children talk about what's going on in your neighborhood. And just say, well, I noticed there's a Christmas tree. Now I don't celebrate Christmas, but I noticed it's up in my neighborhood. What a great entry point for a child that may not celebrate Christmas, but notice in their neighborhood there was a Christmas tree. Or notice there's a menorah. Or notice, right, that someone's not eating something, or they're doing something differently, or they're wearing different clothes, to show that they're excited about something or a celebration that's coming up. So we're going to constantly talking about what we're learning, what we're observing, what did we notice, and then being cautious to make sure that we're not focusing on certain holidays and not on others. So as I mentioned, I'm even kind of making sure I say the pronunciation correctly, is Duvale. I hope I'm saying this correctly. Duvale was actually last weekend. It's a 5-day festival of lights, like I said, celebrated by millions of people. That we know about that one. It's a great way to give a window to children into celebrations they're not familiar with, right? Or they are familiar with, or are, right? So making sure that we're not focusing on one celebration over the other. And then also being really meaningful about how we have that window. Windows should try to be authentic. So if you're taking up, you're right, let's have a window into another celebration, then think about having someone from that culture or that community come and do a talk to children. It could be, a community member in the neighborhood. It could be one of the families, one of the teachers at your site. You can also do a window by going into, a Zoom or a YouTube video that is done by quality, right? Like a window by a quality organization such as National Geographic, or NACE might have something, the National Association for the Education of Young Children, like looking to find those quality early childhood videos that might give a window into a different experience. And of course, I'm going to mention a book. So one of my favorites, as we talk about during holidays have a lot of food, right, associated with them. And so one of my favorite books is Fry Bread and a Native American family story. What a great book. And this book is so rich. Again, it has great illustrations. And then it starts just talking about food. And all children can relate to these great food experiences around celebrations. And fried bread is food. Flour, salt, water, cornmeal, baking powder, perhaps milk, and maybe sugar mixed in a bowl. And you can make this, you can talk about this, you can read the book. Then it goes into how it's not just food, but fried bread is shape. And then it goes into fried bread is sound. And then further, fried bread is time, right? And talk about, right, the different children you see here and the rich, wonderful, colorful pictures, and talk about that great diversity. And go on. Fried bread is art. And talk about how food is not just food, but people could feel that it's art or that it's history. Yes, and we all, right, have different experiences in this history. And the book keeps going in to specifically talking about Native Americans, where fried bread is nation. And then it talks about, right, it gives some examples of some tribes. What a great, rich, powerful story. And I think that one talks about Native Americans in such a wonderful way, but also, our indigenous people. And then also we can use that as a jumping off point. We're talking about our own rich experiences, rituals, foods, and then making food. It's such a good one to, kind of have some meaningful conversation and meaningful experiences with our young children. Right. One other book that I wanted to share with you is Marisol McDonald doesn't match. And so this book is wonderful because it's in English and Spanish. And this is a great book that actually deals with something as we talk about race and culture and diversity. Well, it talks about Marisol, and Marisol is a part of two cultures. She's biracial. And so that's another experience that we can share. That one, as we talk about giving a window to children, one is a great one for identity to talk about how we're all, could be a mix of, of different things, and also a window, right? To saying that no group is a monolithic group. And then just because you may know that, one group may celebrate Kwanzaa or one group is celebrating Hanukkah, they all do it so differently. And they, right, and they all take pieces and parts of, they may be a part of several cultures. So you can see here that this book, Marisol is, talks about her brother, her family. She talks about her colorful outfits that she wears to show her identity. And then she tries to change her identity to fit in because they're saying, Marisol, you don't match. Your hair doesn't match. Your clothes don't match. And so, and it's interesting here that it's a great discussion. My mother, for example, had green eyes and sandy blonde hair, and it was her natural hair, and she's an African American. It's a great story to talk about all the different. Yeah, so there are some children out there that have blonde hair, blue eyes or green eyes, but they're still Black children. Or that Marisol has bright red hair, and it talks about how you could be of a culture, and we're having this image of what do you think you might see, right, when you hear a Black child or a Native American child or a Hispanic child, and how that may be a mismatch from the reality. Right? And so this is a wonderful, rich book that Marisol wants to change herself, and in the end, she realizes that she wants to be herself, and she doesn't want to change herself. So as you talk about holidays, culture, think about how some children may feel like, oh, maybe I should be doing this. I don't celebrate this, but I want to. Or how can I change, what we do celebrate? And so this is a good one to have another discussion about, one, being comfortable with who you are, recognizing that what you think you might see may not be what you see. That we have gingers that are all different cultures and races. And also having a discussion about if children want to participate in a holiday that's a part of the dominant culture, and how they don't have to if they don't want to, and they can be themselves, and it's all okay, and they can learn about something. So I thought this was a great book to share with you, just about what children may be feeling. And if some of you are like, well, these are complicated thoughts for very young children, I can remember having these wonderings and thoughts when I was a young child. And, us talking and being 5 and 6 and trying to explain, my mother has blonde hair, and people telling me I was wrong. And so remembering, as I mentioned earlier, about the danger of a single story, and helping children to understand the diversity that's within cultures, and understanding and respecting and learning more about that diversity, whether it be, the differences between cultures, within cultures, and helping children. So here's something that I want to share that I think is really important. As a child of color, I had to explain this, and it did feel like a burden that I had to explain this, hair color and eye color, and no, it's true. No, that's not true. It is true. And so we don't want to, this is why these discussions are so key. We don't want to put these burdens to explain and learn on children who may not have the words to explain what they're feeling. And so children rely on us as adults to help them to make sense of all the things that they're seeing. So I kind of hear that same thought of like, well, children don't care if someone is a different race or a different culture. It's not about them necessarily, yeah, they're friends anyway. Maybe, children see differences, and there's some research to show that they respond to those differences and they also have bias. But it's also really important, even if they're the best of friends and don't even notice that someone is a different race, that we talk about race. Because if they don't care about it, we should make them care and make them care in terms of looking at the positive things that we notice about race, diversity, and equity. So let me give some more ideas. So we talked about maybe rethinking a holiday party and having a sharing party and celebrating those differences and talk. Difference is wonderful. We have to do a reflection on ourselves when we say, well, children don't remember we talked about this before. If you've seen some of my live discussions about race and equity, children don't see color. Children should see color. It kind of makes us reflect, do you think then that color is something that we shouldn't see, or color is beautiful? And if you don't see it, oh boy, are you missing some key things that we want to alert children to. And we want to talk about those cinnamon and peach, right? All those beautiful colors in the world. So I also wanted to share another book with you, because I am recognizing the time that we're living in right now, which is a pandemic, a world pandemic. So no matter who's listening, children might be feeling some disappointment about not seeing someone during the holidays. So I pulled out a book that, one of my colleagues, Marilyn Peterson, alerted me to this great book called Saturday. And Saturday is such a look at the rich colors, right? You see in the story, it's wonderful for young children. And so let me just read just a bit to you. This morning, Ava and her mother were all smiles. It was Saturday because Ava's mother worked Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Friday. Saturday was the day they cherished. So it goes into what they do on Saturdays and how excited they were. And Ava and her mother could hardly wait. Zoom! Off they went. And they went to the library. But when they reached the library, story time was canceled. Oh no, Ava cried. It's canceled, wailed Ava's mother. They paused, closed their eyes, let out a deep breath. Don't worry, Ava, her mother reassured her. Today will be special. Today will be splendid. Today is Saturday. The book goes on with these disappointments that Ava's feeling and how her mother supports her and being able to deal with those disappointments on their special day. I thought this book would be a great addition as you talk about the holidays during a global pandemic where children could be feeling some disappointment, right, of all cultures. So I've had some questions that pop up, and I want to make sure that I get to those great questions that teachers and parents have given me around the holidays. And one question is, well, Angela, do I just have a different day and celebrate a different part of the world and their holiday? How does this look as I try to teach young children, whether I'm a teacher, in a classroom, or even if you're a parent and you're curious? Is that if you are an educator, just relax. You don't have to teach every holiday. A great idea, as I mentioned, is to do that survey. So do the survey and make sure that you try to celebrate the holidays that are really meaningful to the children within your program and the staff. Don't just you look at the children, but also look at the teachers and the staff and the custodian and the lunch lady. And you want to celebrate the most important, meaningful holidays within the community, right, of the program that you work with. Also, if you're a parent, You want to celebrate, of course, your rituals and wonderful holidays. And the first place that you want to look for diversity and think about where to start is your community. And look at the community and see what holidays they celebrate. And also look at the differences within holidays. I have pumpkin pie and I have sweet potato pie. Like, right? What are the differences even within a particular holiday? And notice and discuss those. Then that's where you go out further to that window and just think about holidays that your child maybe is curious about, has questions about, kind of start there. And if your child doesn't have questions, windows are still wonderful. So if you just want to pick a window and, well, we don't celebrate Kwanzaa, but I want to know more about it. And so then pick that window and have that great discussion. So a teacher asked me, she's like, oh, well, Angela, so I don't do a holiday a day? Oh my goodness, please don't, you don't have to do a holiday a day. I would hate to take a trip to Italy or to, right, or South Korea or Africa and just spend one day. So I would say if you're an educator, then think about talking about those different places and windows, to different places in the world throughout the year. It's not meaningful to spend just one day talking about a particular holiday or a particular group of people. It's much more meaningful to talk about, differences throughout the entire year, and also be cautious of how you do that. So one teacher said, oh, we're going to read a book about Kwanzaa, and then I'm going to put the colors red, black, and green in the art area. Because, right, those are the colors that, if you're familiar with Kwanzaa, those are some of the colors that that are really meaningful and important. But here's my take on that. Keep all the colors out all the time. And if you, after you read the book about Kwanzaa, which would be a great activity, notice if children gravitate to red, black, or green after you've read the story. That's much more meaningful to say, look, oh my gosh, Mary, after I is what you're drawing based off the book that I read about Kwanzaa? And if Mary says, yes, you really, I'm excited and I wanna, whatever Mary's language is, if she says nothing or she smiles or she nods or she actually says something, because young children are still getting their language skills, then wow, what a great, I think are you coloring that? Are you doing a picture based off of a story that we read? Would be a great way to kind of take that information or take that observation from a child, and then, right, and really it becomes an activity. So instead of like limiting colors, I would say, point out if children are actually using the colors or creating the things that you read about in your stories, or that you talked about, or that you had pictures of, or they saw a video about. You could take a video field trip and have a discussion. And don't forget to just first turn to your neighborhood. So don't think you have to travel far, that maybe sometimes diversity is right there in front of your face and you kind of didn't really notice it or look for it. So community, looking at that community diversity. Let me see what else. One other idea I wanted to share was that another program that I work with that was like, how do we celebrate holidays is they did winter lights. What a great inclusive way to think about holidays. That winter, it gets darker. And so light is something that we're all thinking about and wondering about. And, it may be getting darker where you are. And what does that mean? And then having the children and the adults share how they deal with that change in light, talk about their holiday lights will surely come into the discussion and say, wow, you have holiday lights? I wonder if we should bring that in the classroom. What kind of holiday lights? Some children may say, no, I don't have any holiday lights. So you say, that's okay. What lights do you have? Well, I just have the light in my front porch. And having that discussion, what a great way to talk about winter lights, to just talk about what's happening at that time in such a meaningful way. And children, don't worry. Children will bring it up anyway. And don't forget, so this is another, as we kind of wrap up, definitely chat in your questions and comments. I love to read them after after we do our live sessions. Is that some organizations don't have holidays because they're like, and you know, I would say to that, it can feel disappointing that the teachers go, we can't celebrate holidays. Well, here's what I would say to that is that, of course, you could talk about your celebrations that you have. You could share that. I think the thing is that I think we kind of like threw, you know how you say you throw away the, what's the saying, the bath water with the baby with the bath water? Is that right, everyone? So we can still talk about the fact that I am celebrating this. You are Miss Angela. Tell me more. Well, this is a picture of what we're celebrating at my house, and invite the children to bring in pictures or talk about their celebrations. So we still can share and enjoy celebrations with one another. The only thing I ask is us to be thoughtful about how we celebrate, make sure it's meaningful, make sure that we're sharing with one another, and make sure it's a time where you can, right, have that choice to participate, right, or just learn and listen. And we kind of take in and soak in all that great diversity during this special time. Okay. So I hope you got some good ideas.
Yes, I think you have really kicked off a great conversation. Live right now, looking at the comments that we have in the chat, we have a lot of great feedback from individuals, and then I'm sure we will have some that will come later with the recording as well. So first and foremost, thank you so much, Angela, for your time. And we're going to take this time and transition to a Q&A portion because we do have some questions with people who have commented in the chat. So a couple questions that we have. The first one is as follows. So this perspective of learning first instead of celebrating is great. Question, should we be starting these holiday discussions at the beginning of the year so we don't end up putting too much emphasis on a single holiday season? And how do we keep that momentum throughout the year? Thank you.
Oh, what a great question. You said it. You just, the person who said the question actually said the answer. I would agree that you guys are very savvy group as always. It's yes, I would start with that survey at the beginning of the year. Starting with not just holidays, but also interests and hobbies and just getting to know families. And yes, keep the momentum going. And maybe just have that questionnaire, keep it visible. Don't just look at it at the beginning of the year, but maybe keep bringing it out throughout the year so you don't forget that, oh, this child is fasting at this time and that's how they celebrate. Or, and thinking about, oh, well, they're going to celebrate, they're not going to eat the birthday cake, right? Because they're celebrating this at this time of the year. Right. So I think it's really about being cautious. One way to do that is a bulletin board is one way to do that. So a give and take bulletin board is something that, as teachers, sometimes we always like take over the bulletin board. Have a bulletin board for families. Teachers can share about their families, graduations, any celebration, and that may help keep it moving along throughout the entire year. That you're like, oh, it's a graduate, and then you pin that up on the bulletin board and kind of sparks some discussion amongst the children and the families.
Love it. Yeah, it definitely is a great conversation starter, and it can be fun. Also, if you have children get involved with some of the crafts or art that's going to be displayed on the bulletin board, I think that's a great way to engage them as well. So the next question that we have is, what should you say if there is only one child not celebrating as the rest? One teacher commented that Sally celebrated a different holiday and asked Sally to talk about it. Sally did not want to because she did not want to be different, the only.
Yes. Oh my goodness. What a great question.
Yes.
It kind of tied back a little bit to the book that I mentioned, which is a great starting point with Marisol McDonald Doesn't Match. And that may be a great way. You kind of feel singled out. I've been in that position where, you're kind of the only one and everyone looks at you, and it feels heavy because you're supposed to represent, like, I don't represent everyone, so you could kind of feel that way. And children do that. Children naturally, developmentally will think, that for example, they think that anything that has 4 legs is a dog, for example. Children, that's a natural thing that children do. They're like, oh, honey, that's a cow or whatever. Children naturally do that. If we know development and we know children naturally do that, then you want to, say, oh, everyone's different, even within cultures, there's differences. And that is on the teacher or parents to say that, so children don't have that burden. With that, children may also want to be part of the dominant culture. That's what children want to do, and I can relate to that, where I'm just like, oh, why is my hair curly, or something, I want it to be straight. It took a while to embrace, some of those things. So I would say, let the child come into her identity as she wishes. But it would be a great opportunity to say, have someone else come in to talk about, her culture, someone from that culture. It could be her parents. It could be someone from the community to share in that dialogue, or something that you find. And if you have a question, well, is this that I'm finding, this book or this resource, is it appropriate? Ask her family. So that the adults in her family will definitely help you in that journey. You're not alone. You don't have to decide that by yourself. And quality resources such as NACE, as I mentioned before, can be a great way to make judgments about a resource. And so I would say that I wish someone had done that for me. That I was like, oh, I don't want this, and someone had taken out a book about, about being a Black child, or eating greens. No one ate collard greens. Collard greens are delicious.
They are.
Yeah. I could have shared that with my classmates. I was too nervous, or I didn't want to be different, to share how delicious collard greens are. This is something people should not miss. So encourage and slowly support that child, who's that only one. Give that extra support and be cautious, and you'll know what to do by your observations of that child, to give them that support, to speak out, or you to speak out for them, to say, oh my goodness, if you haven't tried collard greens, you need to.
I love that. I love the examples that you gave with this. And for the question that was asked, yes, I can relate as well. And so I love that you incorporated the family aspect with this, because having that family engagement, or having an outside speaker come in, that can add value to the conversation, in the sense of that there's support, as well as someone who may have more expertise within the area, within that area as well. But it's a learning opportunity for everyone, and it can be something that's warm and inviting, and that's the whole point. It doesn't have to be something that is isolating or the opposite of inclusion. So that's what I love about our conversations that we're having today. And these questions are wonderful. So thank you for asking these incredible questions, because they're the right ones to be asking. The last question that we have on here for now, and again, we'll continue the conversation through chats and through Messenger. If you're watching the recording, please feel free to message us, and we will put you in contact, and so you guys can continue the conversation past this. But the last one we have is really something that to really consider, in the sense of, it may step on some toes if not handled appropriately. So we want to make sure that we're addressing this with caution. But what about the separation of church and state? If holidays are religious, should we teach it?
Right. Oh, what a good question. So
Yeah, it's a good question.
There is that separation. So that's why it may be, or it may not be religious. Holidays do have usually a religious foundation to them. Right. But that doesn't mean that family is celebrating it because of that, right, religious foundation. I wouldn't assume that. They could be, or they could not, or they could be doing a mix of things. See, we're complicated. They could be doing a mix of things, or picking out the parts of something that they feel comfortable celebrating. Right. So just think of yourself and how complex you are, and just realize that families are very complex. And so I would say that just say that. I would just say, oh, there is a religious component to that, but I don't know if that's why that family's celebrating it like that. So you can still celebrate holidays. And a child could just say, oh, I think there's a religious component, or you could explain, oh, there's a religious component to that. And there. Yeah. You don't have to really go in detail about that religion, especially if you're not familiar with it. If it's new to you, you can't give a meaningful discussion about that. You could just say, and you know what? I have to say this, for children, the most simplest answer usually does the trick. That you go, oh, there's another component to that.
Right. And that's
yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just a first introduction, so to speak. It's not something that you necessarily have to expand on and be an expert on as a teacher. And also my suggestion would be is to check with your child care center, and also just try to check in and see like what can you share, what are you able to share before you start sharing. And then also, like you said, talking with the families, and really just making it so it's an inclusive decision as well. But to your point, a lot of the holidays do have some religious component, but you also have to remember that these are children, so the simplest answers are sometimes the most well received.
They are. And just to emphasize, I want to emphasize this because it may take some weight off of some teachers who are professionals out there. Right. You don't have to share. Children are sharing.
Right.
Parents are sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So you actually may share if you don't want to. You don't have to share anything. You just may be saying, I've noticed that Mary keeps talking about lights. Would you guys like to explore that further? And it could be tied to a religious holiday, but the act of just talking about lights or talking about a tree can have nothing to do with it, and just children want to talk about it. Right. So I hope that takes a little bit of stress off, but actually, absolutely, Raven, check in with families, check in with your administrators, and also NACCE gives some great guidelines to give us a framework to think about, and that can be really, really helpful as you go through this journey.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Angela, for your tips, your resources, for also providing practical advice that we can all use during this time and moving forward into the new year. We can actually sit down, form a strategy, a game plan of how we can include these conversations and talk about diversity and equity and inclusion in different ways that pertain to times of celebration. And so just want to thank you for providing that foundation for us. And just want to thank everyone who is joining us today, because I hope this was a very helpful time for you as well. And we want to continue this conversation. So with that being said, as we continue this conversation, please, please, please continue to
Oh, there it goes. Okay.